Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the next iteration of our Taiwan Studies Program talk series. My name is James Lin. I am Assistant Professor of International Studies and Associate Chair at the Taiwan Studies Program. So this afternoon, we're very honored to have Professor Yi-Tze Lee with us. Dr. Lee is Associate Professor in the Department of Ethnic Relations and Cultures at National Dong Hwa University, where up until last year, he served for 4 years as department chair.
Yep.
And currently he is a visiting Fulbright scholar at the University of Washington. And so we've been very lucky to have Yi-Tze for this academic year where he's been a wonderful member of our Taiwan Studies program. So Dr. Lee received his PhD in anthropology from the University of Pittsburgh in 2012. He has been doing field work among the indigenous peoples in Taiwan, especially the Amis people. His research interests cover indigenous revitalization and resilience, including agricultural transition, food sovereignty, ritual performance, infrastructure, landscape building, and multi-species networking. Yi-Tze will give his presentation today titled Situating Animal Kin in Urban Infrastructure, 3 Stories of the Amis Life World and Their Entangled Indigeneity in Contemporary Taiwan. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lee to this talk series.
Well, thank you, James. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very honored and delighted to have the chance to speak here on this unceded territory of the Pacific Northwest people and still recognize the sovereignty and authority of their tradition. And today I'll bring related probably or a different perspective of the indigenous story from across the Pacific from Taiwan. So like James said, my topic today is situating an animal kin in urban infrastructure. So I provide 3 stories of the Amis people in their life world to talk about their indigeneity in Taiwan nowadays. So in this talk, I will draw on the lived experience of Taiwan's indigenous Amis people to examine multi-species realities through the lens of entanglement, particularly in contemporary political economic contexts. By entanglement, I refer to the dynamics and reciprocal interaction between cultural agency and social context in everyday life. Traditionally, these interactions have been framed in terms of human engagement with other species through subsistence strategy and the utilization of environmental resources. However, in modern context, entanglement has expanded to encompass human-made environments broadly conceptualized as infrastructure. Anthropological study of environment and infrastructure recognize multiple coexisting realities that illuminate the intricate relationship between human and their animal kin. By analyzing the experiences of the Amis people within urban infrastructure, I highlight how animals are increasingly perceived as indicator of environment change and governance. In my recent book chapter, Environmental Shift to new political languages. In this context, animals are not passive victims of modernization, but agentive beings in indigenous strategies of survivance, cultural resurgence, and political recognition. Therefore, by the study, I argue that the entangled relationship between the Amis people and their animal kin, disrupted by urbanization and state regulation, is being re-articulated through indigenous-led practices that translate multi-species kinship into a new political and environmental action with the accent of the environmental infrastructure. Before going into the ethnographic story, I will introduce my theoretical approach to multi-species ethnography. Broadly speaking, the multi-species approach can be categorized into 4 distinct aspects. First, species as responsible others. A key example is Deborah Rowe's Wild Dog Dreaming, which explore how animals shape indigenous perspectives on existence in Australia. In indigenous traditional knowledge, wild dogs are considered ancestors of Australian Aboriginal people. Within kinship system, the death of an animal is not simply an ecological event, but is embedded within a framework of responsibility and obligation, reflecting a broader ethical stance toward interspecies relations. Second, species a symbol in meaning production. Eduardo Kuhn's How Far We Think provide an exemplary case for this approach. Kuhn argued that symbolic interpretation often obscure the fact that humans, in the process of creating meaning, are also situated within broader semiotic systems that include other species. The multi-species perspective suggests that dreams, motivations, and intentions are not exclusively human traits. This challenges anthropocentric frameworks and reposition meaning-making as an interspecies process. Third, species as a mediator of assemblage. Drawing from Anna Tsing's The Mushroom at the Edge of the World, this approach examines how species contribute to assemblage. Assemblage incorporates political and economic force, challenging the notion that species interaction exists outside capital system. Instead, they highlight how multi-species relationships are embedded in global economic structure. Tsing's work prompts us to reconsider how assemblages function as a site of meaning-making, resistance, and adaptation in precarious times. Fourth, species as agents in the landscape. Julie Cruikshank's Do Glaciers Listen offer a compelling case for this perspective by interrogating how landscapes, including glaciers, are perceived as sentient and responsive within indigenous knowledge system. Cruikshank challenged the idea that local knowledge is a fixed tradition, instead demonstrating that knowledge is generated through ongoing interaction between human, landscaping, and other species. Together, these 4 approaches provide a nuanced framework for understanding multi-species ethnography, moving beyond ethnocentric analysis to recognize the agency, meaning-making capacities, and relational dynamics of non-human beings. After a brief theoretical review, I now turn to my ethnographic exploration. The Amis, the major population that I work with, are the largest indigenous group in Taiwan, accounting for approximately 220,000 of the country's nearly 520,000 indigenous population. But they take approximately 2% of the total population in Taiwan. Among them, the National Amis, who reside in Taiwan's Eastern Valley, have developed ritual practices organized by male-age grade groups and shamans. These rituals have traditionally depending on material resources from wild animals, with pigs, fish, and birds playing particular roles. While integrated community building initiative primarily aim to inventory or cultivate unique cultural identity, as Taiwan's government do since the 1990s. In each township, the transformation of communities is also influenced by environmental changes, post-disaster recovery efforts, and shift in local economic condition. In urbanized Amis communities, economic structure underwent significant change during the Japanese colonial period. The traditional subsistence-based horticulture made into a settled rice farm economy. constrained by planting and harvesting cycles, and later into a wage labor system. This shift altered Amis people's relationship with their environment, from foraging and hunting in the wild to a production model centered on agriculture. Religious and ritual practices also adapt accordingly, moving away from the single annual minute festival to the ritual calendar centered around biennial rice harvest and related ceremonies. In the case of the Amis, the once stable rice ritual and the species relationship developed through rice cultivation have undergone dramatic change in urbanized settings, where rice is no longer a primary crop. Birds once hunted during rice harvest, fish caught for ancestral landing ceremonies, and pigs symbolizing accumulated household wealth remain closely tied to the lives of Amis communities. However, post-war Taiwanese regulation on marine access have significantly restricted Amis coastal activities, limiting the relationship between people and fish. Environmental pollution and the large-scale reduction of farmland have disrupted migratory birds' habitats, making it difficult for Amis to hunt birds in harvest season as a reward for laborers. The pig farms and slaughterhouse has also affected the availability of pigs for family rituals, as these ceremonies are now dictated by commercial production schedules. This was further exacerbated during the COVID pandemic, when ritual activity are facing disruption due to the widespread reluctance to use raw meat. The fieldwork for this research was conducted in Lilao, an Amis village in northern Hualien City near the outlet of the Chicasuan River. Lilao is a major community of Nanshi Ame. Of its population, about 1,500, half of them are Amis, or Banza, as northern Amis call themselves, and rest are Han Chinese. Compared to other major Nanshi Ame communities near Hualien City, Lilao has a different urbanization trajectory that resulted in its unique ritual landscape. In the past, Lilao was the gateway to access the salt and sea of Amis or Nanshi Amis population, and its extended territory ranging from the current resident area to the low hill area of Yanliao across the Hualien River on the map. So Lilao people constantly move from the village to the seashore and to the Yanliao area for seafood, water birds, and plant collecting, while sending water buffalo for grass grazing. However, after World War II, due to the military conflict and restriction on coast seafaring, the people of Lilao were forced to landlock themselves in the lower hill area. Rituals and subsistence strategies are woven together in the setting of the natural environment and availability of ritual materials. In 1917, Japanese colonial ethnologists and investigators mapped Taiwanese indigenous territories, documenting the subsistence activities of Amis communities. Fishing and bird catching were concentrated in seashore region and lower mountain area. However, after World War II, industrialization and urban development drastically transformed this landscape. Under martial law, seashores with traditional activities were converted into military bases, temples, public parks, and later B&B resorts, and asphalt factories established near urban centers, all to displace Amis communities from their access to the seashore that they can fish and hunt in the ground. Traditionally, the most important male initiation ritual takes place every 7 years. There are 9 grade naming to be cycled and moving upward accordingly. Lilao male youngsters need to run about 5 kilometers for their initiation ceremony from the village to the seashore in order to reenact ancestral ashore event some 100 years ago, but now also being obstructed by the infrastructure that I mentioned above. Historically, male initiation ritual and couple courtship gathering for Amis youth took place on Rocky Beach, where communal activities reinforce social bonds. However, in response to the modernization, this gathering have been relocated to major park feature table and tents. symbolizing the efforts to align with modern aesthetics and social expectation. The above-mentioned adjacent area have been altered due to the modern infrastructure. We can turn also to the household for further examination. 3 major animals, fish, pig, and bird, and the staple food, rice, hold symbolic significance in Amis daily life. As we see at the corner of the Amis household, 4 corners are divided by different representation of animal and staple plant. In the past, these are places that related materials are prepared. However, the modernization housing construction barely recognize these rules. In contemporary context, the role of different species and their gender meaning can no longer be understood solely from the household perspective. By examining their usage and external interaction, we can reconsider the evolving nature of the ritual spaces. The following example examines the daily activity of the Amis since the colonial period, focusing on their interaction with animal kin as a significant other beings. I will discuss 3 key anecdotes that illustrate these entanglements. First is the impact of COVID-19 restriction on the handling of sacrificed pig for funeral rituals. The second is a transformation of traditional fishing strategies in response to environmental and economic challenges. And the third is negotiation between ceremonial bird hunting, animal protection law, and fluctuating market demand. So now I'll start with the 3 anecdotes. The pig. On the weekend of early June, the street of Lilau village in Hualien County was eerily quiet. Normally, the Amis villager would take advantage of their day off to gather at breakfast shops or visit friends for drinks and conversation. But this day was different, not just because the sweltering heat, but because just weeks ago, the government had issued a level 3 COVID alert, strictly prohibit gathering of more than 5 people without a special reason. Even so, a solemn chanting of ritual sound echoed from the corner of house. It was the first day of the post-funeral rite of an elder deceased. The family had invited shaman's group to perform the ceremony, and in keeping with the tradition, had slaughtered a pig to be shared among attended relatives and friends. All family members wore masks that muffled the sound of their chanting. The shaman, however, had to remove their mask to perform the ritual of spreading rice wine during the prayers. Unlike in the past, when the live pig would first be stunned and bled at the slaughterhouse before being brought home for the butchering, this time the meat has already been roughly divided at the slaughterhouse. Outside, only 2 mid-aged men work in the courtyard, sorting and portioning the meat. With few hands, the process took the entire morning, which is not a picture here. They have 3, but I couldn't go to the event. I just have to document and use the photo from the others. By midday, more than 20 bags of the raw pork set in the plastic bag, ready to be distributed as customary gift to those who had come to pay their respects. But that day, apart from the shamans, no guests arrived. The neatly portioned meat sat untouched on the table at the entrance of the mooring house. One by one, the family made calls, urging relatives to come and collect their share. The afternoon stretched on. The meat began to spoil. Only a few close ones come to greet and took their share. With no other choice, the bereaved family was left to deal with the rotten pork themselves. When my mother in the village received her share, she shrieked and quipped, quote, "Now this family finally know how they really smell like to others," end quote. This particular family, whose child works in the township office, carry an air of arrogance. They have even resort to legal disputes to seize land from their own relatives. Despite their considerable wealth, they were unwilling to share it when it's necessary. Unsurprisingly, they are not well liked. Among the Amis people, the pig is more than livestock. It is a sacred mount of Dunyi, the guardian spirit, and the means through which ancestors bestow blessing upon their descendants. That day, the stretch of spoiled pork perfectly captured how the villagers truly saw this family. During Amis funeral, specific part of the sacrificial pig carry distinct symbolic meaning. The head of preserved during the meat distribution process. The right half of the upper school is given to the eldest female relative from the maternal lineage, while the left half goes to the eldest male relative. The lower jawbone, on the other hand, is presented to the shaman who share kinship tie with the grief family. The pig's right foreleg serves as a ritual tool to clean impurities. It is used to touch every corner of the mooring house before being carried away by the most powerful shaman. The liver, another crucial part, must be held by the eldest male relative from the maternal side. In the final phase of the ceremony, he sits inside the mooring house, calling for each assistant relatives to explain their role in the funeral preparations. At that moment, the faqih, the ritual leader, place a single grain of the rice on the raw liver, symbolizing the completion of the duty. The liver is then taken outside, grilled, and shared among the male relatives gathering outdoors. These ritualistic practices, centered around the distribution of pork, continue to uphold cultural significance even as the village become increasingly urbanized. In the past, even Amis households raised pigs for ceremonial use, with pig ties and cattle shack built close to the main house. It wasn't until 1960, when the Taiwanese government began promoting commercial pig farming, that Amis communities shift from home-raised pigs to rely on the slaughterhouse for the ritual supply. This shift also meant that the timing of pig slaughter became dictated by market schedule rather than community need. With the introduction of monetary transaction in pig trading, Amis people become further entangled in the flow of capitalist economies. Nowadays, a piglet is used to replace the use of a live large pig, which the bereaved family should take its squeeze to summon the ancestors. As capitalist exchange replaced the bond of village kinship network, pork sharing tradition were gradually supplanted by monetary gifts and red envelopes. The aroma of pork, once an offering steaming from the pot of blood and broth, now linger in the villagers' conversation, becoming a flavor of memory rather than the feast itself. Through the working of capitalism, the intimate network of kinship and the unmistakable scent of pork continue to circulate through the village, no longer through shared flesh and bone, but through transactions, measured, counted, and exchanged. Thus, the pig has come to symbolize the intersection of capitalist flexibility and traditional blessing, reflecting the evolving dynamics between household autonomy and economic dependency. The intricate kinship network, once inseparable of village life, have been replaced by logic of capitalism. The fish. In the photo of 1931, as shown on the right-hand side here, we see Amis male catching fish right at the estuary of Hualien River. Everyone held a fish net and was packed. It was the time before the Hualien port built in 1937 and Zhonghua paper factory built in 1968. The two modern infrastructures not only drive Amis fishermen away from their traditional shore, but also exploit the environment of fish habitat. Now there is only special occasion of fishing ritual in every June to be performed in the pond of nearby park for the youngster to learn. The practice is isolated away from the shore, and the Amis elder cannot pass on the feeling of the changing tide to their disciples. At the river mouth of Hualien Creek, the Nanshi Ami people have long demonstrated their fish powwows. Fishing tools such as net, triangle traps, and bamboo rafts are strictly male domain. Women are not allowed to touch them. The village elder says before dawn, if one goes with the river mouth on an empty stomach and offers 3 prayers with miftik, spreading of the rice wine, the day's catch will be exceptionally abundant. The major infrastructure that blocks the interaction between Amis and fish is the Zhonghua Pulp and Paper Factory. Established in 1968, the pulp factory is a major contamination source to Hualien River. The effluent from the Zhonghua Pulp Corporate's plant discharged directly into the Hualien River, just 3 kilometers upstream from the estuary natural ecological protection zone. The accumulation of the dark brown effluent to the river mouth has created the striking Yin-Yang River phenomenon. However, many young men in Lilao, many young Amis men in Lilao spend their youth fishing in that waters. After Zhonghua Pulp Corporation set up at the site, the once thriving fish stock declined dramatically. Yet, as many young men found stable jobs at the factory as wage laborers, the dwindling fish population became less a concern. Between November and February, the Taiwanese government permits eel fry fishing at the river mouth. Ordinary Japanese eel are sent to local market, fetching just 10 NT dollars, about 0.4 US dollar per fish. But white eel are a different story. One tiny fry can sell for 200 NT dollar, about 8 US dollars, heading straight to Japanese restaurant to be grilled into kabayaki eel. On a November evening, Duni, who is in his 50s, clocked out from the shift of the paper mill. He grabbed an old pair of wader and triangular net that had been gathered thus for years, determined to see if he could catch white eel over that night. Without warning, he misstepped. The current began to carry him away. His friends saw him disappearing into the dark wave and immediately formed a human chain to reach him back. Gasping on the shore, Duni caught up, sweat weather. His mind racing. Then realizing hit him. He had ignored the elder's warning. The fish net he used had been stored carelessly, left near his wife's washing machine instead of in a proper, undisturbed place. That was a mistake. He grabbed a bottle of rice wine from the shore and quickly performed another offering, whispering prayer of thanks. Only after completing the ritual did he feel steady again. He decided to go home that night. Before returning, he did need to properly store the net. Only then he can try the luck. According to the legend, one of Lilao's ancestors, Majuju, was swept out to sea while fishing along the coast. The current carried him to the distant woman's island known as Balayasan, where he was kept like livestock, fed and raised as he were a pig, with no chance to escape. One day, a great fish, perhaps a whale, named Saining, appeared by the shore and spoke to Majuju, offering to carry him back home. But there was a warning. They would have to dive 5 times during the journey, and he must remain cautious. Majuju followed Saining's instruction while riding on her back. And when they safely reached the shore of Lilao, Saining made a pact with Majuju. From that day on, Majuju's descendant must come to the coast to honor her every 7 years. This legend evolved into Amis' age-grade advancement ritual, a task of endurance and remembrance. During the ceremony, young men carry a sacred ceremonial boat and race several kilometers from the village to the seashore. And this black and white photo is in 1950s, the first photo the village has ever taken about the ritual. After offering their prayer, they pushed the boat into the waves and rowed it back to land. This reenactment retraced the path of their ancestor Majuju's return and fulfilled the ancestor promise to honor the great fish Saining. However, the coast itself has become a contested and a transformed landscape. From the day when military bunkers lined the shore to the present, when the Water Management Bureau controlled the coastline, there has never been consultation with Amis people on how to use their ancestral domain. In later years, the Seashore Authority installed massive concrete wave breakers to reduce undercurrent erosion. The Amis mockingly call this structure concrete rice dumpling, 水泥肉粽. But these so-called protective measures have disrupted the sacred terrain. Particular infrastructure obstacles have obstructed the ancestral promise between Majuju and Saining and between the villagers and seashore. There were 4 transitions of male initiation ritual runway throughout different time span. First is the Orange Route, which followed in the period before 1945, before the war. It was marked by the irrigation channel and direct way going from the village. Youngsters then were ordered to gather at the location called Ba'adai, where they can put the offering, a sandy area that believed to be where ancestors are ashore. Actually, the very first black and white photo was taken to memorize at the time when they can still go with the irrigation channel. The second is nowadays is the later on is the blue route used in between 1945 to 1973. It was pushed further away from the ritual site of Ba Dai when there was location of military bank established there. The obstacle come from the military patrol and marginalization of Amis activities. The third green line, when adopted between 1973 to 2001, there is now the paved road of truck standing cement and stone rocks in between. That cut the continuous runway of traffic lights. The obstacle are modern infrastructure and traffic regulation. The newest and fourth is a red route nowadays, adopting from 2001. There was still a cement and asphalt factory, but more recent obstacles are B&B resorts, which take away the sacredness of the seashore and run it into recreational sites. Fish has been important kin to the Amis people in the ancestral time and contemporary, either fishing as food or fish for navigation. It is Amis' intermediate agent to the sea. The promise to the great fish dining, made since the village's founding, has never wavered. Yet the ever-changing coastal infrastructure and the pollution from industrial activities have made it nearly impossible for the Amis to witness the return of the great fish upon this shore once again. The bird. In the midst of the Nanshi Ami people, after Amis settled in their land, the giants known as Aligagai continuously occupied the territory. Aligagai could transform into male figure and engage in sexual relation with Amis women. Ordinary weapon couldn't harm the Aligagai. To hunt down the Aligagai, Amis warrior learned to craft the male headgear, dagal, adorned with a long tail feather of the white pheasant to aid in flight, ultimately lead to the Aligagai's defeat. According to this myth, the Amis people are newcomers to the present territory, determined to fight for the land and learn to utilize the local flora and fauna. During the field training that takes place before the initiation ceremony of the male group, adolescent members hunt in the bushes near sand dune where they sleep outdoors. From these training sessions, I learned that almost every male member who has endured sleep deprivation and outdoor hunger has experienced a sense of dreaming to dance with birds and cheering for the exhaustion of training. The birds they catch, usually quails, serve as a meal during the grueling training. Upon completing the training, Amis adolescents are finally allowed to wear the male headgear dagar in public, symbolizing their agility and vitality. Contemporary Amis pop singer Shu Mian, composed a song entitled Ugabat Nu Atulan to honor members of this age group. The song portrayed a beautiful image of young men flying across the field with their feathers of honor, just as a pheasant provides crest feather for them. These experiences make birds significant representative of the Amis, especially male members. Now let's take a look of that beautiful of Ukapano Adulan. I just take probably 1 minute for you guys to enjoy. Do we have the mute sound? Oh, sorry, we have to change the.
I don't think so.
Or is it? Oh, here it goes.
Yes. Perfect.
Actually, symbolic that touching a tree to go with your friend, you should not go by yourself. Otherwise, you'll just catch your own friends. And this is actually portraying Adulan's cousin of Claudia. But still, the better image is very much clear. So respecting the order, the hierarchical order, posting first to your elder before your queen. The hierarchical cascade. So feather actually is the critical part to determine whether these youngsters are ready for becoming, mostly just jumping around, but if they encounter the feather, they should be organized together. And changing from the family duty to the male group. Okay. Actually, I love this music video a lot. When I played in the classroom, the class students usually love it. They can dance together. Okay. Let's get back to the PowerPoint here. So Sumin's Ugabano Atulan actually portray the relation between birds and the Amis male. Amis male used to catch Taiwanese swing-host pheasant and use its long tail feather to make their elongate crown. Traditionally, a full-fledged headdress for a young man requires 16 to 20 long tail feather from the swing-host pheasant. Like what I showed here, the swing-host pheasant, Lan Fuxian, is endangered species already, so it's no longer be able to catch in Taiwan. But every swing-host pheasant has only 2 white feathers. So in order to collect 16 to 20 feathers to make the dress gear, you have to catch about 8 to 10 endangered, swing-host pheasant. It is no longer available in Taiwan. So what they're doing now? The headdress for men in their 20s are especially needed because of the new hunting regulation or the prohibition and reduced number of the endangered swing-host pheasant. The catch was scarce and prohibition in Taiwan. Amis young crown maker now have to purchase and import a feather from Vietnam in order to make a crown for 8,000 NT dollar, almost 300 US dollar for one crown, just for his male initiation ritual. The bird, once a symbol of crossing boundaries, now require crossing an actual national border, importing white pheasant feather from the Vietnam to craft a traditional male's headgear. By late December, the Lilao's ritual cycle marked the bird hunting festival, a tradition historically tied to the second rice harvest. In the past, the period coincided with the activity called Misalilu, a communal labor exchange in which relatives and friends gather to help one another reap the crop. Apart from the festivities, villagers also hunted the birds that fed on the ripening rice grains. During the thankful labor feast, the Amis people prepare meal for their helpers, often featuring birds caught in the field. They are abundant near the riverbank, making it easy to catch up to set up the nest or trap in the marshy paddies. Traditionally, Amis hunters prefer the bird group called Masamamanaai gu ayam, the term meaning birds that move back and forth near the farmland. These birds were especially favored not just for their fatty meat, but because they were seen as having a contract with the Amis helper, who temporarily migrate between field and factory to help with the harvest. Much like swan siblings, migratory birds were seen as loyal companions, moving in flocks, migrating together, and foraging as a group. This made them especially beloved among the Amis for catching and feasting, even more so than the resident birds that stay year-round. Gazao, one of the few remaining villagers who still own the farmland, set out with over 20 wire bird traps. He walked southward to the rice field of township, carefully placing the trap along the edge of the rice paddies, hoping to catch the various birds and gather them to feed. Today, bird catch is no longer a year-round practice, but a regulated activity requiring a temporary hunting permit. Amis hunter must immediately release the mistakenly caught species that are protected under the Wildlife Conservation Act. Common game like birds such as sparrow, quail, moorhens, or bamboo partridge may still be hunted. However, species like swing-host pheasant, mountain hog eagle, or long-tailed shrikes are protected and should not be caught. To ensure there is enough game for festival offerings, village leaders have turned to purchase quails from the professional hunter in southern Taiwan. This not only guaranteed the quantity of the bird meat, but also eliminated the uncertainty of relying local hunters on predictable catches. Once again, the relationship between tradition and species have been reshaped by force of capitalism, now scattered by the monetary transaction. While the traditional festivities may appear intact, the number of villagers who can actually hunt birds continue to dwindle in the real location. By the discussion with government authorities throughout years and the pushing of deliberative civil policy forum, Amis people are nowadays invited to join the civil platform for conservation of the little tern. These migrant birds has made the nest in the shell of the Hualien River outlet, and their breeding location is overlapping with the censure that a location for Amis to put the net and triangle trap for fishing as need. The selective hunting for certain species reflect not only environmental concerns, but also the cultural rhythm of Amis festival. During the non-agricultural breeding season, Amis hunters allow breed population to replenish, obtaining from hunting to ensure sustainability. Thus, bird hunting is not merely a subsistence practice, it is woven into fabric of its life itself, carrying deep ecological awareness, educational significance, and cultural heritage. So nowadays, these Amis are joining into the Hualien River estuarine conservation area that protecting the little tern, which they don't actually catch a lot, so that they are entrusted to monitor where are the little terns stay and have the nest on that area. Conclusion. Through these three stories, I have illustrated various perspectives and positions within multi-species approaches, the production of symbolic meaning, the reflection of non-human roles, the assemblage of society and action, and the mediation of life becoming process. I have observed these approaches manifesting in different ways in the lives of Amis people. With the bird, birds are deeply intertwined with Amis life cycle and are used to describe specific individuals, embodying symbolic and semantic dimensions. It reflects in the description of the personal feature and the building of civic platform with government agency. Pigs are throughout their commodification and use reflect human roles and become subject of moral evaluation. Pig raising and its commodified ritual reveals household aesthetics in capitalist trend of community development. Fish are caught using various different materials and technologies, positioning them as participants in an assemblage of action shaped by technological and environmental factors. It makes the witness of the testimony on pollution as colonialism since the coastal area become NIMBY region and war zone. The expansion of infrastructure in Amis communities function as a form of non-human agency, mediating post-colonial and urban understanding of place and time of the Amis. There are several significances of the study that I want to emphasize in the very end. So first is the urban indigeneity and infrastructure relation. Unlike many multi-species ethnographies situated in rural or natural settings, the Amis engage with the animal kin in the urbanized coastal and suburban environment shaped by military zone, industrial sites, and real estate development. This urban entanglement foreground infrastructure, roads, factory, flood control, a key mediator in Amis animal relations, a feature less emphasized in traditional or previous multi-species literature. Second, ritualized kinship and spiritual agency. Amis people maintain ritual relationship with animals as kin or spiritual being, pigs in funeral or births in the ceremony, which reflect an ontology where animals are not merely ecological actors, but relational persons. These relationships are embedded in ancestral cosmologies that link an animal with strong or appearance to moral balance and spiritual communications. Third, legal pluralism and right discourse. The Amis case is entangled in the legal pluralism, negotiating between indigenous hunting right and the state's environment and conservation laws. These include activism around cultural heritage law and hunting rights promoted, requiring the translation of animal kinship into policy-friendly terms, such as cultural resource or intangible heritage. Last, survivance and resilience through animal kins. Amis communities emphasize resilient ceremonial practice despite disrupting environment as models of cultural and ecological survivance with animal kins. Animals are drawn back into ritual life through adaptation, reflecting a flexible but enduring ontology. The Amis case uniquely highlight urban entanglement, ritual agency, legal translation, and infrastructural negotiation, making it a powerful contribution to the field of this multi-species ethnography, particularly within settler colonial, post-industrial, and East Asian contexts. So today, my talk is about the use and the family engagement with 3 different animals in their lives. So this is the new generation of youth participating the age grade advancement. In the end, they are facing toward the outlet of the Hualien River and facing the sun when they need to carry the very first message from the ancestor. So, Alai, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Yi-Tze, for a really wonderful and engaging presentation. So I'd like to open this up for questions from our audience. If you're joining us from online, you can also leave your questions in the comment section of YouTube, and I'll read them out loud for Yi-Tze to answer. Any questions?
Any kind?
If not, I will ask the first question.
Sure.
I find this really fascinating to use, to think about the involvement of birds, fish, and pigs as part of a representation of the changes that the Northern Amis people are going through with post-industrialism, with urbanism. So, when you raised Anna Tsing's Mushroom at the End of the World, I very much see the parallel. I want to ask specifically about the changes in terms of, capitalism emerges at multiple points in these ethnographies. For Anna Tsing, the capitalism is central because it's only in what she calls capitalist ruins that the Matsutake is able to grow.
Right.
And here, I think we see very similar things with the pigs in terms of the transformation from something that can spoil to instead relying on hongbao, on the red envelope, as the form of continuing that ritual in the funerary deaths. And then again with the birds, with the Swinho pheasant becoming endangered, the replacements with the Vietnamese feathers, and then the massive increase in cost. I'm wondering if you could tell us more about how the late stage capitalism, commodity capitalism plays a role. Do the Amis people consider this a good thing, a bad thing? Do they accept that this is simply just the capitalist world that they live in, that they have to resort to imported pheasant feathers from Vietnam to create these important rituals that are important for the adolescents?
Right. Thank you, James.
Yeah.
A great question. It's hard to just say, or it's not just saying like good or bad from Amis perspective or the evaluation. It can be good and bad at the same time. Mostly, for example, in the funeral ritual or house renovation ritual that use the occasional pig, when you cannot join personally, you can just use a red envelope instead of your own participation in person there. But you won't get the share of the pork after that. So there's a way to calculate what are the better ways of engaging to this ritual in a certain significant or important occasion. But for the change that use like Vietnamese feathers to replace the swing hose pheasant's feather. It's actually a very some kind of a difficult transition at a time when they are trying to find if there is a possible like poachers getting all these feathers from swing hose pheasant if possible without any means or luck. Then they change to the use of a Vietnamese feather. So it's still considered anyone who has the authentic swing hose pheasant feather headgear at home, and you can wear it in the dancing ground. That would be the most admirable situation, because for the family, they might pass on the headgear from the father, from the grandfather to the grandson, and they can still carry that. That would be the most adorned part. But now, if they cannot make it, they have to use the replacement. So there's still evaluation on what are the better ways, or what are the less likely means that they have to make if there's no other choice. But also, I think that reflect the situation when Amis face the when Amis encounter the occasion or necessity of capitalism, like engaging in the wage labor work.
Right.
They have to go with the factory shift or different obligations in the work, but they still concerned what are the better ways to engage, to participate with the rituals for either family obligations or other things. So I think nowadays the tempo or the rhythm of the everyday life was replaced from the ritual, traditional ritual into capitalist activities. But then the evaluation comes into whether you would need to join or participate in this specific ritual. For example, if they are coming onto the once every 7 years male initiation ritual, that is the thing that the father and son need to get away from the obligation in the capitalist work and maybe stay in the months. Most of them are away from the village already. They are reside outside of the village in the big cities in Kaohsiung or Taipei. They come back and stay in the village over the summer for a month and see if they can finish the hall training, become recognized as the new rank of the male age grade. Okay, so that is an important one. So everybody is paying attention to that. But for the rest, other family obligations, you can do other ways to replace your responsibilities. So that makes, the capitalism or the use of monetary or other obligations into calculable ways of joining, these traditional ways. I think that by that, I also want to send the message, probably not very clear, but I will try to say it again. I think the Amis people, especially the Lao Amis, they are making the new type of language. The language here, I mean, the way to convey their message, whether they want to, they are making the importance of certain activities. They want to join the traditional ritual or not. This kind of message through their engagement with different levels of rituals nowadays, so that it's not like in the past everybody joined at the same time, but now there are lots of choices you can make to reveal whether you are a part of a certain group or not. Okay, so that becomes a new type of language, or the meaning of becoming Amis identity in nowadays as they engage with the animals or like entangle with different applications then. So that's the maybe response or the further thing that I can say. When contemporary Amis people participate that activity, it's not a direct obligation immediately. They have to decide or prepare and calculate a lot of things to see if they are join this and take away from the job obligation or job responsibilities and coming to that. Yeah.
If I could ask a quick follow-up
Sure,
question
sure.
about that. Could you tell us more about the kind of material conditions?
Mhm.
So it seems like it's necessary to balance between the need to earn a wage
Mhm.
as wage laborers
Mhm.
versus the obligation to fulfill these rituals and
Right.
these customs. What is the kind of class background like of many of these communities? Are they mostly
Right.
wage laborers? You mentioned the
Yeah, I
pulp
should
factory.
have that background explained here. Most of the villagers are actually wage laborers in construction. Some of them are like public service, maybe in police, maybe in like fire department or the pulp factory, etc. So for them, for the construction workers, they have more fluctuating, unstable jobs. So they actually pay attention more on these rituals. They want to join the ritual more, and they can actually take away from, they can have just participate certain period of construction work and leave the work for a certain period of time to come back to join the ritual. And to make the people recognize more that they are concerning about the tradition. But for maybe civil servant officials, they become more concerned about the regulation they have in the job. And they have actually more monetary power or monetary replacement that they can send as red envelopes or other means of participation without in person. So they can just send the money or maybe send some gifts like a box of rice wine or other things so that they show their support, but not in person. So I see some differences like that in general. Yes, for some basic importance here. The wage labor, more physical work, villagers, they actually participate the ritual more rather than the civil service villagers. That's to me a little bit interesting part because in some way civil servant actually has a more regular schedule. So you probably are easy to find the time that you can join, but actually they don't actually do that often. Rather, the wage labor constructors, they actually come to join the rituals more often than the public servants. Yeah. So, and to join this process, usually people send around 1,000 to 2,000 NT dollars if they are not in person for different like house renovation, all the family members or the funerals. It's not a big thing, but for the construction workers, maybe it's big enough for them to, come over to share the pork. Actually, they can take the meat back and make some substitution as the meal for them. Yeah. So it's more like physical workers that they join in the local in person than the officials.
Got it. Okay, I don't want to dominate the question, so questions from our audience. Yes, Bill.
Yeah, so my question is grounded in very deep ignorance of the subject, so forgive me, but do the Amis trace their ancestry to a specific animal species? And it's a related question, do they have sublineages that have like animal ancestors, like totems? Different
Right, sure.
Clans or sublineages?
Not in Amis mythical legend. The Taiwanese indigenous, I mean, in general category, we do have other Taiwanese indigenous people have their ancestry coming from like specific animal, like Taiwan people specifically. They are the descent of the 100-page snake or the hawk eagle. That they have these two specific totem. You can see from like family pot or the craves, wooden craves, and in the household, but not for the Amis. Interestingly, the legend of the Amis is actually from the Japanese colonial documents. Says from maybe Kiwit or Dabalong, the other two like older Amis tribes. They consider the ancestors are coming from heaven, but they don't know how to mate because they are actually brothers and sisters. So they actually observe the animals like the wagtail, another bird actually I wrote in the book chapter, the wagtail strike-like bird, like mate, and they disguise themselves or transform in certain way like the wagtails so that they mate to have the offsprings. But the first generation offspring are different animals. And they will learn that they need to have some rituals with the blessing of the heavenly God so that they can have the normal human offsprings. So they were originally human as an ancestor in the very beginning. And animals are helpers, important helpers, but not the ancestor of the Amis people, according to my reading of the documents and also from the oral history of the village elders. Nor do they have the totem animals in that. Yeah, but they do value a lot on bird. So there are actually different. If I can make the hierarchy of the of the Amis recognition to different animals, birds are the highest they rate. The pigs actually are the mount of the guardian spirit. So they are the helpers of the bird-like spirits. Okay, so they are secondary. And fish are in wander around. Okay, so they are the third tiers anyways. And the lowest actually, to my surprise, is dog. For if in Amis, you can find a saying that if you are going to say, curse to someone, you say, you just like a dog. You're the kid of dog, son of bitch, something like that. So the dog is the lowest. Unlike like Teruku people, another Taiwanese indigenous, dogs are great companion for hunting or for farming. Actually, dogs help the Teruku people to find the millet seed and also plow the field. Say the dog for the Amis are very low. And I asked the elders, why is that? They said the dogs are eating leftovers of the, of human being. They didn't bring things back to the human community. So there are different like hierarchies that I didn't show it today, but interesting to see how Amis evaluate different animals in their daily life experience. Well, thank you.
Zetian.
Yeah, so my question might be a little far from your talk, but
It's okay.
I'm thinking of what's the gender perspective
Mm.
of that story. So like in the pig story we saw shaman, but in other stories mostly men
Mm-hmm.
involved in execution. So yeah, how they're depicting women in their tradition and what the possible influence on the modern idea of gender have.
Right.
Modern idea of gender.
I realized
Sure.
I should have repeated the earlier question because our audience can't hear.
Right.
Yeah, sorry. So the question from Zetian right now is about gender. How does gender play a role? The earlier question that you answered, that Bill asked, was about I guess animal lineage
Mm-hmm.
for the Amis. So go ahead. Sorry about that.
No problem. Yes, and I didn't I actually have a different version of this slide and talk about the distribution of like a gender dichotomy. So here, as you can see, the plus and minus, and showing like it's just not saying plus are better or minus are worse, but plus means male and minus means female. So there are corners are representing more on male, or the others representing more on female. So on this, these are just the way that traditional, if you go to a very traditional Northern Amis household, you will see the corner like this. These are corners with specific names in the Amis language that they refer to that. So like the northeastern corner is specific for female. And they are actually the ritual utensils, like the pots that representing female ancestors, also stored in that corner. And that corner is for pig. So meaning that if you slaughter a pig, you have to do it in that corner. If you have the pig leg that to clean the mooring house, to clean the impurity, you have to start from that corner. So that is the a little bit like a Bordurian kind of cosmology of the household, but that corner is specific for female. And then the very diagonal opposite to that is the male corner, which is the southwest part, where they put the headgear of the bird feather, and also some of the haunted games jawbones also put there. So they are particularly male domain for it. And the fish actually goes with a little bit like in between, even though it should not be. So it's a very special cultural design. Even though people say that, oh, the fish is the male domain, that you shouldn't be touched by the female, but the corner actually goes closer to the female part. So that's why some of the female are, carelessly put their fishnet closer to the female corner that make the magic or make the blessing of the fishnet, out of function. Yeah, so that is and the diagonal of that is the rice corner. So this is a very interesting, or say, the traditional, the authentic, or the very cultural ideal ways of doing things. But nowadays there's no household like only rectangular size. So whenever people are going into the house, they have to find where is the most representative corner, either under a stair or somewhere they can start the performance that representing certain gender issues. So yeah, going back to that, I have also put the animals that related to it. So bird and fish are more related, especially birds is related to male. And the fish actually is in the process of doing it. You have to, when you catch the fish, it has to be male domain. But when you take the fish back home, it can be processed by female. But you cannot touch the male feather gear by female at all times. And then the pig is also, even though it's representing the female, but it's, like I mentioned, it's slaughtered by male in the outdoor. So there are some transition of that, and this disproportionately representation, but that kind of dynamic corner and also representing of the gendered idea is still in everybody's map. I mean, in elders' map when they are in the village. So yeah, it's gendered idea, and also these animals are very much related. And for the bird, actually, I didn't put it. There are a lot of small rituals but very significant. I cannot put them all together. There's a ritual in the shamanic rejuvenating process when they are doing in every September. This ritual kind of for the shamanic power regrowth. By the end of that ritual for about 2 weeks, the shaman actually would carry, most of them are now female shaman. They have to carry the ginger leaf representing the birds and then shoot it out to the field to represent the release of bird back to the field so that they can have the bird catch in December as the end of the rice harvest. I actually asked the female shamans, why do you practice that? They say, if we don't do that, there's no bird for you to catch. So, but then bird is a very male kind of domain representation. But in that particular ritual, maybe the field actually is the female domain. So only female shaman and carry the ginger leaf can do that effect to the release of the symbolic bird. Okay, so that's something, there are a lot of, several, not a lot, but several of these kind of interchanging examples in the field. Yeah, thank you.
Other questions?
If you like, you can ask in Chinese, I can. Or, but I probably cannot speak in the Amis questions.
I have more questions if there are no questions. I have many more questions.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure,
But
sure.
I just want to make sure I don't want to dominate. Is that okay for me to ask a question? Okay. I want to ask about the follow-up answer you gave earlier reminded me when you mentioned the possibility of poaching for the Swinho pheasant.
Mm-hmm.
What are the acts of resistance that you might see in response to? So, for example, with the pigs, it seems like it's kind of the public health directives might seem arbitrary.
Mhm.
Was there resistance from the community against these, COVID-related directives not to congregate and not to practice these rituals? And the same thing for, the imposition that we cannot hunt the Swinho pheasants because it's an endangered species. Is there
Right.
resistance against that as well?
Right. The pig actually is it's a special occasion. Actually, I find it kind of pop out from the general practice in the COVID situation, because that was a time when everyone are dare of breaking the regulation and go out to claim it. But they also the anecdote that I mentioned here, because that family is a very stingy family and kind of loathed by most of the villagers. So they are set there to kind of see them, kind of having these problems, and no one go to claim the pork. Even though actually, so I mean, the resistance in certain ways will be, for the shamans, they still go kind of break the regulation. There are 5 shamans there, and including the Buri family, there are more than 5. They already break there are lots of restriction breaking event during the COVID period, especially relating to indigenous practice, because they cannot find other substitute for that. But for the occasion of participating in the ritual, like we just talked about, people can use monetary substitute, monetary replacement, or the equivalent to go with that. So it's less of the problem of saying there's a resistance of doing it, because either you go by yourself or you use a monetary equivalent, not much of the problem. The issue is that when Taiwanese government about 5 years ago banned the use of leftover feeding to the pig, there's a transition of that, And at that time, the local slaughterhouse couldn't have enough, pig feed to it. So actually, the family smuggled some of the leftover to the to the pig farms for their own, ritual pigs to come over. So that is kind of a, under table collaboration with the pig farmers that they know with. They, send some leftovers, even though it's banned by the government, but still they are doing it. And for the bird, I think it's less likely because you have to find hunters who can get. And actually, the swinghorn pheasant are not very easily spotted in Hualien area nowadays. It's more likely to be spotted in Central Mountain Ridge. So they actually have to reach out to the poachers or to the other hunters who accidentally got that blue pheasant, the swinghorn pheasant, and then ask them to take the tail. They don't want to eat it. They just need the feather, so they can take the feather and make like the price for the very precious thing, because for the old headgear, you have to kind of replace the decaying feather by the real feather. By the swinghorn pheasant feather. You cannot use the imported thing. So they do still need it sometimes. But the new youngsters head crowns nowadays are mostly made from the imported Vietnamese feathers, which I think in certain way it's ways to see how the local need actually stretch out for maybe like an interregional commercial circle. But on the other hand, you can say that this is a new form of resistance to not using the very authentic one, but creating a new, like they are using, because the Vietnamese pheasant feather are shorter and smaller. So the crown that they need has to have more feathers. And then it also make the crown look a little bit smaller. So the whole scene or the landscape of that ritual will be different from the people when they use the traditional authentic crown. Okay, so I think the resistance goes maybe more with what you can, what the availability that you have the options there. So for the pigs, or the fish, they can, in the past, they raise a pig by themselves. They need to have the pig that they know that it's raised mostly like in the ritualistic manner. But now it's all commercial ways, so they have to adopt that. And the fish, actually, in the past, estuary catch are not the eries. Not the eels. It's the local species like the carps or other fish, but the eels are now the most catch fish, not catch crab, the catch that they are mostly going with. So it also changed the local maybe you can say the catchscape or the reward that the people are chasing to. But the bird, you cannot really go around with that restriction because it's not much of availability in local. So they have to go with abroad, or they go with the most of the case are the zoo hunters. Some of them has a connection. They will ask for a replacement from that swinghorn's tail feather.
Yeah, that's very interesting to see the transition from the carp to the eel because of the export market to Japan.
Yeah.
And then it's also interesting because typically in capitalism, you go towards cheaper commodities, but the 8,000 NT for the Vietnamese headdress, that's like a week of wages.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Of money.
I feel surprised when most of the young head crown makers actually take that as their Wai Kwai, the subsidies that they can earn when it's time about the harvest ritual. like people coming back to the village to join that thing, and who can make the crown, actually not many. So there are like 7 in their 30s. They are better crown makers, recognized by people. They are trusted to do these things. They devoted like 3 months before the harvest ritual to make all these crowns. One people may have like 20 to 30 entrusted crown making obligation. I mean the jobs for him, and that actually take over the 2 months wage. I mean the equivalent to their job, so they can temporarily quit their jobs and to do this. Yeah, so that makes another type of a commodity circulation in that area.
Very interesting.
Actually have
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ellen,
sure.
please.
Thanks. So in terms of indigenous traditional ways that involve plants and eco-environments and certain fish and certain wildlife, like the birds, is at least in our region, there is some effort that is led by indigenous communities trying to make sure that environmental capacities are either restored or maintained, and working with local capitalistic government communities and other people to make sure that there's a conservation effort so that their way of living that they have been doing for thousands of years is maintained and has a future.
Right.
It's not only a future
Commercial,
that is one in transition that is made to accommodate the colonial way of life, but is actually bending the colonial communities' attitude towards the indigenous ways and helping that live on. Is there anything like that you came across where there's efforts by indigenous people like Amis who are trying to work with local authorities to save or conserve their environment?
Let me just repeat the question. Sure. So Ellen is asking whether, like here in the Pacific Northwest, where there are efforts to work with indigenous communities on conservation and sustainability. So I assume like salmon is probably a good example.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
Right.
Are there similar efforts for the Amis?
Right. Thanks for the question. That's a great one. Another example that I mentioned, but not really in detail, is the Little Tern conservation. If I can, that I think the Amis are invited to join that platform of conservation, but the Little Tern actually are not traditionally symbolic species to the Amis. They are there, and Amis knows they are there, and they don't actually eat or use their feather. But then nowadays, Little Tern are also endangered. So the government asked them to join because they have some fishing site near the place they're breeding. But then, yeah, I don't see there's a specific species that Amis, at least in this area, initiate to make a conservation effort with the government or NGOs or other ways. One reason for this, I will say, if I need to make an explanation for that, is there are various, I mean, unlike, there are actually some of the conservation examples in Taiwan. For example, like the high mountain, I have to find a type of fish that is enclosed near the Ali Mountain, Ali Shan area, which is like landlocked. circulating kind of fish coming from the ice age. And actually the Zhou people recognize that fish and they start to work with the government to have the conservation for that fish. But the location where the Nansha Amis are staying, are living, are not having this specific species that stay here for a very, very long time and only here in their view. Actually, like I mentioned in the talk, they like the migratory birds more than the local resident birds as their companion or their feast to the harvest companion, to harvest friends. So my explanation or response to that is that the species actually coming or with a various transition in this area, maybe from the colonial times. That in the colonial documents, it actually says that in this area there are a lot of deers, like spotted flower deers that reside in this area, and the villagers are doing something to that, maybe use the skins or their intellect. But there's no deer spotted at all by now. It's all gone and to the southern part of, we still have that kind of deer, but not in this area. So I will say it goes with a serial colonial process and environmental change that doesn't really have the chance to make the Amis people have the, like the efforts that they can do to preserve or help on the certain species thrive in this area. Yeah, so as far as I know, but I think they might comes up with certain things, because nowadays I think the indigenous hunting right movement is not saying that we should hunt something, but now we should preserve something so that we can hunt them, right? So that goes with the new ways of interaction between the indigenous people and the government. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're just at 5 o'clock now, so let's give a round of applause to Professor Lee for a really fascinating presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your research with us today.
Thank you.
And that'll be it. Just a reminder, next week we have another talk and then another talk the week after that. So we've got a busy quarter here at the Taiwan Studies Program. But thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you, James. Thank you all.